candidate that ran against Grothman that was there just to put his name on the ballot.
He ran as an independent though,
Did he?
so it's a different, yeah.
But it was a matter of, you have to have a serious, strong candidate to ask those questions of. You know, if they just want to get their name in lights, doesn't help.
How many times has Grothman been elected there?
2
He
minutes.
has been in.
I mean, in the Senate seat.
Oh, Senate since 92, when did he throw Panzer out? No,
Ooh.
not 92, 96, I believe it is.
This is his fourth
So,
election.
He's been in the assembly since the 80s.
And he, besides you and this other independent, was he unopposed before? This for the Senate
For
stuff?
the Senate, he was unopposed, the only
Yeah.
other one was the independent.
What is it about him?
Yeah.
that
'Cause there was
people are
nobody
voting
else.
for him?
So he, to me, he talks about the issues that, I mean, to me, Washington County is where people went to escape Milwaukee. So he uses all of the
Race
scary.
baiting, yeah.
So he will talk about, you know, horrible things about African Americans and Latinos, and he'll talk about completely anti-homosexual, completely, I mean, and unfortunately, so far, it appeals. And what I really think is that it appeals to the really, really right who are paying attention, and then the rest of the Republicans don't know, and they're just voting because there's the R.
And then he'll say protecting voter rights, voter ID,
Right,
gun rights,
right.
it all hot buttons.
Do you think he had a big wake-up call with that anti-woman statement though, or no? Do you think that just went, again, like he didn't care,
It must have gained you
So
some
my-
votes.
So my fear, I'm sure it helped me get some votes. My fear is that, yeah, I don't think he cares. I mean, I don't.
or?
Do you know what percentage of people don't vote in Washington County?
I don't know that.
Because I wonder if those are the people that, you know, that would make a difference if there's a high number of people that don't vote.
To me, I always thought that if somehow I could get to every door, that I could win an election in that district. I don't know how to get to every door. I don't know how to have every personal conversation. So that's why my goal as chair of the county party is to change that perception of Dems in general, so that I can just do a mailing and that's enough, and we're not there yet. It has to be a personal conversation to turn them, and I can't talk to 100,000
Well,
people.
My husband and I have been going door to door since Al Gore ran first time. And we still feel that it's really important to go to door, even in our area, which is rather democratic. But we've also been thinking about, we need to move on. I mean, we'll go campaign in our area, but we know that chances are our area will vote for the Democratic candidate. And so we're thinking, you know, we need to move out, move into the pinker or purple counties.
Or the
And
red
Rural
ones?
areas, yeah.
But in the blue areas is where you still need to go there, because on Van, you could pull up people that don't vote that voted presidential elections, but not in
Right.
midterms. And you need to get, this election, probably more than any other election, isn't about the candidates, isn't about the issues. It's about turnout. Read what happened in Florida. Both sides are saying it was because of turnout. Both sides are saying it. Does it ring a bell? You've got to get the people out to vote, period.
So to me, like, if I understand your question right, like, where is your time best spent? And again, like, I will never say red over blue. Like, it has to be both.
Right.
But the things, perhaps, in the blue district that are most important are the ones that come towards the end, and perhaps the things that are most important in a red district are the things that come in the beginning. So perhaps it's doing some doors in June in a red area, and it's doing the doors in the blue area once you get to August, September. Because in blue, the job is to get the vote out. In red, it's to change people's minds. In a red district, by the time you get to October, November, people have decided they're not going to make that change as much. But early on, people are open to that possibility. Yes?
You've mentioned education as one issue. If you were to choose 3 or even 5 issues that the State Democratic Party should emphasize to help you change red to blue in red districts, what would they be?
Yep, so, even Republicans love their public schools, the majority of them. The charter thing doesn't play well in red district, Republicans, because the school oftentimes is the center point for the cities. Not as much with Republicans in cities as my experience. The other issue that really seems to swing people is sustainable agriculture, GMOs, family farms. There seems to be a push in red areas amongst Republicans to try to save the actual family farms or to have more sustainable agriculture or, and anything along those lines. What else has been a swing
That's
issue?
very important.
Yeah,
And ask the state Democratic Party what their policy on that is and what their policy in general for healthy rural economies is. And I bet you'll get nothing.
Right.
and I
That's
see
a
this.
They
huge
ignore the
problem,
rural.
And I
because
see
they're not
that.
addressing the rural issues.
That's the point.
I mean, which are, I mean, you know,
That's
any of us in rural areas could speak profusely on. There's
And-
no outreach, there's no campaign about any of it.
Exactly.
Water being a principal one,
Exactly.
you know, it's just
Even
outrageous.
now, watch, now frac sand everybody's talking
Right.
about, but what's the alternative to
Mhm.
frac sand? It's healthy agricultural communities,
Mhm.
but there's not a positive side, it's always against something.
Well, and the other big thing here that's lost, and I think it's lost on so many people, because nobody's talking about it, is agriculture pays 2% of the property taxes in the state. 2%. Who's paying the rest of the bulk of the taxes? Residential property owners. What happens when you go in and you have factory farms, mining, what have you, that are destroying these rural economies? You don't have any property tax base left. You don't have any communities left. So that's a big, huge issue, right? And nobody's talking about it. It's like, you're destroying your own tax base, and that is a concern to everybody, you know, so.
Lots of people are talking about it, but the state Democratic Party is not.
Right.
Right.
Horrible job.
So my third issue for you is environmental issues. I actually found that Republicans had concern about environmental issues, they had concern about clean water. And so I'd say those are the three things that I talked to Republicans about the most. Like, those were our safe topics. We just didn't talk about those.
I'm like shocked to hear that, no, but that's great. I mean, it's good that they seem to be more concerned than
So
I
I
would have
see
expected them to.
environment in schools as kind of the same thing. Like, right before I ran, there was a poll that was done statewide about public education, and the first question was, do you think that our schools are in trouble, or do you think we have failing schools? And it was 75% of the people said, yeah, I think our schools are in trouble, I think that we have failing schools. The next question was, you know, do you feel that your community schools are effective? 70% of people said yes, they thought that their community schools were effective. And so what that tells me is, they've been fed this lie that there are these other districts that are failing, but your district is just fine. And so when I talk to people about schools, I talked about their community schools, because that's what resonated, and I would talk about their environment. We had a gas leak in Jackson, in our county, right around this time, and that helped, because people were
Yeah.
losing their wells, and they had to ship
Right.
their water, and it was like, you know, this is because of this bill that Grothman signed,
Right.
and it was easier to talk about the environment that way.
Yeah.
There have been a number of attacks or simply repeal of local control in the since you ran. Are these issues, do you feel these are issues in red counties?
I do. I don't have any tried and true, because I haven't been on the doors now since that. I'm trying to think of an example from my campaign. I'd ask people about, you know, what concerns they had, what keeps you up at night, really helped a lot. And people would talk about how my kids have a medical problem, or I have I have a relative who can't get health care, and we talk only about health care. And then at the very end, I would say, that's what the Affordable Care Act is for. Oh, I hate the Affordable Care Act. And it's like, but you want insurance for your, and we talk through that. And I kind of see the local control issues the same way. But I'm trying to think of how I would message that or how I would word that. I'm not sure, but my gut says yes, that's a good swing issue.
It's strange how Republicans in this state do not want federal control over the state,
Right,
but they want state control over the local.
yep.
Is there something wrong there?
One of the big things that I found very successful though in my campaign is it's given me a different mindset. It's another reason I'm really glad that I ran. I stopped thinking about Republicans as enemies, and I started to think about them as people who have thoughts and feelings and children and emotions, and if we can, again, if we can find that common ground and stop talking about the things that divide us and start talking about the things that keep us together, that you can have a lot more successful conversations. And I just learned to really like bite my cheeks through a lot of things and really try to focus on, but you know, you're concerned about the foods your children are eating, I'm concerned about the food my children are eating too. That was just much more effective.
That would be the one message you'd take away from this, that would be it. Right there. You all have some common values.
Oh, and it's hard sometimes. I mean, it
Yes.
is.
We need to do the messaging like Lakoff said. We need to absorb that.
Yes, yeah, we have to reframe it
We
in
do.
their terminology.
That's the win, that's the win.
That's how it works.
Get rid of
It's
Scott
the evidence.
Fitzgerald, your life will be better.
Well,
Thank
and
you
the
for
thing you said
stepping
in
up.
the beginning, this morning, right,
Right.
that they have a different moral, their moral reasoning, theory is completely different than ours.
But we do have some commonalities, which is what Tanya was saying, was that
Right,
when you find those common things and then talk about them, all of a sudden, you've made a connection that
right.
before was a fight. And that got you 31% of the vote.
That's right. One thing that he said this morning really struck me. I was doing a Republican event, I was doing a house party, and I was talking, and they were asking me about my children, and I was talking about my children, talking a little bit about my classroom. And I'm actually a huge disciplinarian, actually. I think it comes with teaching ninth graders for 18 years. And this one guy's like, oh, you parent like a Republican. And I was like, what are you talking about? Parenting is parenting, and it's not a Republican and a Democrat parenting. But then this morning when he was talking about this whole authoritarian, I'm like, oh. So it's like, I'll tell my kids sometimes, you know, because they're like, Mom, you know, you go out there and you talk about democracy and everybody has a right and everybody has a vote, and yet here we don't have any vote at all. Like, democracy in the streets, kids, dictatorship in the household. All right, well, I think
Michelle, can we ask,
Oh,
Michelle,
yeah,
are you
yeah.
running against,
Scott Fitzgerald.
okay, did you run against him before?
No, that was Lori Compass. She can't run against him because he districted her out.
Ah.
Have you been working with her?
I am,
Yeah,
yes.
she has a lot of experience.
Yes.
yeah.
She came fairly close, didn't she?
40% of the vote.
Yeah.
And in a recall, that is significant.
Yeah.
Because you had a lot of people who would have supported her, but didn't like the concept of recall and voted against her. I don't understand that kind of thinking. I need to think more like you do and talk about these things.
Yeah, I really found that when people had a viewpoint that I just didn't understand, instead of going to the "that's ridiculous," going, "Oh, why do you think that? Like, what made you come to that?" And it just really opened up very good discussion. Sometimes they couldn't come up with it, and I never said it, but sometimes I felt like if they couldn't come up with a reason for it, maybe they're thinking about why they think that way too. Okay, well, I think we're at 4 o'clock. I don't want to keep people from. But if you didn't get a handout, or I also have my card up there. Love talking about red districts. If there's a group, an organization, anyone, a candidate who wants to talk, they are always free to contact me. You are always free to contact me as well.
Let's thank Tanya for her
Hey.
exceptional.